So the Rugby World Cup is less than 10 days away. The excitement is building and the Springboks are looking in some tremendous form heading into this 2023 competition. I decided in this video I'm going to be giving my Springboks Starting XV that I believe would be a very good option heading into this Rugby World Cup. Of course, it may not be exactly what they go with, but hopefully we are relatively close. But do let me know your starting XVs in the comments down below also. But we will jump straight into it, starting with the front row. Now, I have to say these are probably the easiest positions out of the whole side to be able to predict. Number 1, Steven Kitshoff. Number 2, Malcolm Marx. And number 3, Frans Malherbe. Now, this is a tremendous front row, something that the Springboks have used throughout the Rugby Championship, mainly towards the later stages of the competition. Initially, it was Bongi Mbonambi who was getting a few more minutes near the start of the comp. Malcolm Marx, he's certainly shown how dangerous he can be. The best hooker in world rugby at the moment, I believe. And I doubt that that will change by the time we get to the end of the Rugby World Cup. He has been fantastic with the line-out accuracy. And the fact that I've praised Malcolm Marx so much means that we haven't even brushed upon the skill that is next to him. Steven Kitshoff at number 1. The man is a brilliant scrummager, also is able to get over the ball, win those turnovers, which could be absolutely crucial heading into this Rugby World Cup. On his other side, the big man, Frans Malherbe, he seems to be the safest option to have at number 3. So if I was in charge of the Springboks, they would be my front row. Now into the locking duo for number 4. Even though we've seen some decent performances from Jean Klein recently, I believe there's only one man that can take that number 4 jersey for the Springboks into this Rugby World Cup, and his name is Eben Etzebeth. A huge amount of experience under his belt, always going to have that physicality, in pretty decent form. So that is who I go with as the number 4. For number 5, it's slightly more difficult because we've hardly seen one of the two options that I'm thinking get hardly any starting lineup minutes throughout 2023. And I actually think that that last game that we saw between the Springboks and the All Blacks may have slightly swayed my decision for that number 5 jersey as well. So for that reason, I'm actually giving it to Franco Mostert. Now before that, I felt that RG Snyman would be a brilliant option, and I still feel that he would be. But after the way that Mostert was able to get those line-out steals up against the ABs, if he does that consistently throughout the games of the Rugby World Cup, it's going to be very hard to play up against the Springboks when it comes to those line-outs. RG Snyman, I feel, would be an absolutely tremendous option. If he doesn't get that spot on the starting XV, I would love to see him coming off the bench at number 19, and he would still be able to have that impact. He can also steal at the line-out, and also has that offloading game up his sleeve. But moving on to the loose forward trio. Number 6, he's recently returned from injury. I am going with the captain, Siya Kolisi. Now, Marco van Staden also would be a very good option at number 6. And I believe if Siya Kolisi was still injured, he would have been the man that I had as the number 6 option here. But with the way that Siya Kolisi's come back into the side after injury, he's just picked it straight up from where he left off when he did get injured at the end of last year. So that is why I'm sticking with the skipper at number 6. Number 7, I am going Pieter-Steph du Toit. Now, this is also somewhere that they could perhaps have Franco Mostert as an option if they do decide against having him at number 5. But I believe with that physicality and the size that Pieter-Steph du Toit offers, he's a very strong option for number 7. And that is exactly who I would go with there. And then number 8, there are a few options for players who can play 8. But there's only one option, I believe, who is in brilliant form currently, and that is Duane Vermeulen. Now, I would have expected it to be Jasper Wiese after the way that he played last year, but just hasn't quite been able to find that same form that he did have for 2022, whereas Duane Vermeulen, it's a big statement, but I feel he's probably in the best form that he's been in for quite a few years. So it is great to see that he is peaking just at the right time for this Rugby World Cup, but that is the last man that I would have in the fullback. So I've gone with, now that I think about it, the exact same fullback that the Springboks went with up against the All Blacks, in which they were able to get that victory, 35 points to 7. Perhaps that's a sign of things to come for the Boks. But now moving on to the back line, this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. Definitely at scrum-half, because there are 4 options. The options are Cobus Reinach, Faf de Klerk, Grant Williams, and Jaden Hendrickse. Now, I know that some people like Faf de Klerk, and I know that some people don't like Faf de Klerk in the starting lineup. It may not be the most popular choice, but I'm going to go with Faf de Klerk as that starting number 9. The reason being is I feel he's more impactful when he does start a match rather than coming off the bench late. Allows him more time to get into his flow. I believe Hendrickse, Williams and Kobus Rana can all be absolutely awesome options coming off the bench or actually starting in the games. But I think that little bit of late burst of pace from one of those 3 individuals could be exactly what helps the Springboks. Definitely if they are going with that 6-2 split. I don't think we'll see the 7-1 again. But then saying that historic win over the ABs, who knows, maybe it could become a regular occurrence for the Springboks, although I do doubt it. It was due to the injury of Vili Leroux that did mean that it had to be reshuffled. Now moving on to fly half. I believe that there's only one real option here. That is relying on the fact that Handré Pollard at this point is still not expected to make his way into that Rugby World Cup squad. I'm going with Manie Libbok. Now it was only a few weeks ago that people were doubting this man's spot in the starting 15, and that was mainly due to the kicking accuracy of Manie Libbok off the tee. But I believe now, after the way that we saw him play in that last game up against the All Blacks, I've been saying it for a while, even though his kicking at times throughout 2023 hasn't been ideal, throughout those games he's still been able to get try assists, he's been able to set up beautiful backline movements, and seems to be able to gel very nicely with either Damien Valimza or Vili Leroux, whoever they have got playing fullback. So for that reason, I feel Manie Libbok at the moment, he's going to be a future superstar for the Springboks, kicking 100% accuracy in the last game. So that is one of the many reasons why he is in my Springboks starting 15. Now moving out to the left wing. This is where it gets tricky because they've got a man by the name of Makazole Mapimpi, who has a huge amount of experience under his belt, but I am not going with him. Instead, I am going to go with Kurt Learinsa. Now, this man has a try-scoring prowess like almost no other. Anytime he gets that ball, it seems like there's a very high probability that man will be crossing the try line, and that is exactly what the Springboks need out on that left wing side. Makazole Mapimpi, tremendous player, just hasn't quite been able to be as clinical as we have seen in past years. So I believe that the coaches, they may look at that younger option and go with Kurt Learinsa out on that left wing and perhaps save Makazole Mapimpi for either coming off the bench or perhaps some of those other matches of the Rugby World Cup. Looking through now at the centres, this is also where it gets difficult because we have seen some brilliant performances from a few in the 12 and 13 jersey over the last few weeks for the Springboks. Number 12, controversially, I would have Andre Esterhuizen as my starting number 12. Now, I'm not basing it off experience here. I'm basing it off form. And I don't feel Damien Dialende has been out of form. I just feel while Andre Esterhuizen is playing such good rugby, he should be rewarded with a few more minutes. So that is why I would go with him at number 12. Of course, Dialende, if they go with him, still a very strong option to have. I would give that slight edge at the moment to Andre Esterhuizen, which leaves a man on his outside at number 13. Now, normally this is easy, and you go Lekanyuam. The problem is he is injured, and that means that we have to pick a new number 13 for the Springboks. 2 weeks ago, we saw Jesse Kriel up against Wales, had one of the best performances of his career, getting himself 2 tries, also helping drastically with the way that backline was able to gel. But then we got a taste of something else. That sounds dodgy. Then we got a glimpse of what could be in that game up against the All Blacks, and that was Canan Moodie playing number 13. With the amount of players that they've got in the back 3, Jesse Kriel, I feel, will always give you a solid enough performance, but I'm going with X Factor here. I'm going with what worked in that game up against New Zealand. I'm going with what I hope will be the combination they try at least once throughout this Rugby World Cup. So number 12, Andre Esterhuizen, like I mentioned, and number 13, Canan Moodie as that outside centre. The way when you look at the head-to-head between him and Rieko Ioane, he was just able to be a league above. Shows exactly how talented this young man is. He can also play out on that right wing, but the reason I haven't gone with him out there is because I've got this man there. Cheslin Colby had to be somewhere, could have been maybe a fullback option to play 11 up against Wales. So there's plenty of reshuffling that could happen in the Springboks backline, but for me personally, I would still have Cheslin Colby as their number 14 option. He's shown what he can do in a World Cup before, and I wouldn't be surprised if he can do it once more. But now the final position in the starting 15. Vili Leroux throughout the Rugby Championship was an extremely solid option. He offered that stability at the back, as well as a brilliant kicking game when exiting his own 22. But Damien Valimza, recently that man's just gone a little bit more up my pecking order. That sounds really, really like an innuendo. He's been impressing me, is a better way of putting it. And I think that might actually be who I want to see as the Springboks fullback in some of these Rugby World Cup games. I feel like that combination of Marnie Libbok at 10 with Damien Valimza at 15. You've got the two Stormers players. They seem to bounce off each other quite nicely. The one thing that makes me think that they may not go with that though is the fact that Damien Valimza is also fly half cover for Marnie Libbok. Although with the fact that Faf de Klerk can also play there as well, maybe we see a bit more of Valimza playing 15. Although with the experience of Willie le Roux, I wouldn't be surprised if they went with him instead. But for me, the starting 15, I would like to have Damien Valimza. But that is my Springboks Starting XV. Do let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Who would you change? Who would you keep? I'd love to hear your guys' opinions as we head closer to this Rugby World Cup. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We are looking to do this for a few of the other sides throughout the Rugby World Cup teams, so be sure to keep an eye out for that as well. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and I will see you all for the next one.